Yeah, we had done a number of films for NBC under the franchise title In the Line of Duty. And when the event happened where there was the assault on the compound at Waco, and a bunch of ATF officers were killed and wounded, I got a call the next day from NBC, and the question was, would I want to make a movie about this event? At that time, we had no idea that the siege of the compound would last from February 28th, when I got the call, until April the 19th. So at that time, I had to make a decision very quickly. Do we want to make a movie? Well, not only did I have to make a decision based on the merits of whether there was a movie, but also they wanted it on the air in May for the May sweeps. So my immediate reaction was, I don't think so. I mean, this thing needs a bit of perspective. We don't have a lot of facts. And the person from NBC said, think about it, let me call you tomorrow. So she called me the next day, and I said, you know, I've decided this probably isn't the right thing. There's so much media attention. We have to get it right. I'm not sure we have enough information. And she said, well, let me tell you something. If you don't do it, someone else will. And we'd love to do it under the franchise title In Line of Duty. It helps the picture. Please reconsider. So I called that afternoon. I called a number of people to try to learn as much as I could in the next couple of hours about it. And what I found out was that we could, in fact, do a movie about what happened leading up to yesterday, leading up to February 28th, 1993. So I learned a lot in the next few hours, and I called back NBC and I said, okay, we'll give it a go. And I think that's where ethics come in probably most of all. When I got the phone call, would you make this movie? My immediate reaction was, maybe now's not the right time. But when I was told that somebody else is going to make it anyway, and this was an opportunity to increase my library and to do another picture under the franchise title, I had to weigh commerce. I had to weigh making a living. And I think all of us can justify doing anything as long as the authorities say it's okay to do it if you need it to make a living. So drawing the line is very, very difficult when you have a family to feed and a mortgage to pay. And I think that's what puts people in the most difficult positions. In this case, I could have taken the position, you know, it's too soon, I don't want to do it. And taken a somewhat ethical or moral position, which would have looked awfully silly if somebody else had made the movie, done well with it, and people say, you know, they got enough information. Remember, we were only telling the story up to the date that happened the day before. We weren't telling the story as it went along. So, but I think the point to be made is that all of us are sometimes asked to push the envelope sometimes, and all of us have to make the decision, you know, I just don't want to be involved in that. I've been asked to do a number of things where trials are still going on, where I felt it was very wrong to make a movie where the issue involved had not been adjudicated yet. I also felt very uncomfortable over the years when making true stories where you only had one person's point of view in a conflicting situation, where I oftentimes would not do that. I wouldn't buy an individual's rights when I knew there was a conflicting position that held as much weight. In Waco, we bought no rights. What we did was we paid a small stipend to anyone who had information about the inside of the cult. I think our movie is incredibly accurate, given the fact that we're 14 years later, that there have been multiple investigations. I think that one could say that is incredibly accurate. It's very important that you be dramatic in a television movie. It's also very important that you pay attention to the facts and to the spirit of a scene that may have happened. So you're always balancing those two things. You may change the order of events, you may composite characters, you may do a number of things that are not exactly true to a newspaper article, if you were writing it as a newspaper piece, but you must remain true to the spirit of the character and the scenes. We had the constraints of good taste, in portraying the Branch Davidians. We received a lot of information that was sexual in nature, that we couldn't show, but rather we had to imply, which was fine. It was pretty well documented that Koresh had sexual relations with underage girls. That was part of his thing. And we portrayed it in a way that was very, well, it implied it without saying it.
Okay, now, close your eyes. Now open. You know what it means?
House of David?
Not yet. But you're promised to the Lamb. Now you just wait for him to call.
In addition, he had quite a skewed view of adultery, which was that God had said to him that he should have sex with all the wives in the compound. And in fact, if the wives had sex with their husbands, that would be adultery. And he preached that in the film. But that was actually one of his sermons. In terms of the promotion of the film, we had absolutely no say. We finished shooting just 3 weeks before we aired. So they took a rough cut of the film and made their promos. Coincidentally, there was in Washington, D.C., congressional hearings going on about violence on television in the time period between when we finished shooting and the time we aired. And one of the congressmen saw a promo on NBC for our film and actually asked the president of NBC about it when he was before Congress. At which point I got a call and said, is that shot that they used in the promo in the film? And in fact, it had been taken out already from the film. It was a shot of someone being shot. It was actually a bullet going into someone. And it was not utilized in the film. The film today, if you look at it, is very tame in terms of its violence. So you can say in the 14 years in the interim that television has become more explicit in its violence. Ethical issues came up because the siege continued, because it was an ongoing event. And when we started to write the script and do pre-production, as I say, we had no idea that this news event would still be going on while we were shooting the picture. So ethical issues presented itself in the areas of, geez, much more information is going to come out. Are we going to be portraying it properly? Ethical issues came out in the fact that we were going to be portraying people who, as it turned out, were killed while we were shooting outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was on April the 19th, was when the FBI stormed the compound, which was 90 miles down the road, and 70 some odd people were killed, including all the characters who were being portrayed by our actors. So our actors on that day were traumatized by the fact that their counterparts were in fact killed. So yeah, I mean, I think we all felt a little bit of the immediacy just painted us with some kind of ethical issues. I think that as it turned out, we were okay, that it turned out okay.